Mike, if you give, I asked Mike to, because he's a successful businessman, and he's in effect operating in the real world, let me put it that way. We're still involved in a kind of partly theoretical, we're in the real world, but he's doing things in the world as it is, to use Ed Chambers' distinction there. I asked him if he would be kind enough to watch each presentation and to then give us a critique of the conference. He's coming to, he knows enough about this to do that, but he's still new at it. He's still in the early stages of understanding the monetary systems and problems. So I thought it'd be an ideal way to see what more evidence do we need to present, in which areas, where are we convincing, where is it not convincing, and to do that now, and that's our next. So please welcome Michael Krajovic.
Hello. Everyone still hanging in there? Yeah, Steve explained that through association with my father, actually there were some things I wanted to talk about. And Steve said, well, geez, the conference agenda is pretty well filled up, so maybe you could come in and offer a critique at the end of the conference. You know, and I have to admit that this is the first time that anyone's asked me to spend my own money to come to a conference of such dedicated, committed experts and activists that I've never met, that I've never read their books, and just to have the opportunity of criticizing their efforts. You know, hell, I don't even know what you guys were talking about half the time. On top of that, you know, you have this nice young man that's going to record it all, and you know, it's the last day of the conference, the last program, you're exhausted. As I said, half the people are gone. The people that are here are pretty well exhausted, and it's right before lunch, and I think it's threatening to rain. I'd hate to see what Steve would do to a person if he was a banker, you know, but anyhow, if you notice, this is also the only program he doesn't have the name of the speaker listed, and I think that Steve did that for one of two reasons. First, it was to give me a chance to intermingle in a covert way, kind of like the CIA, to move our money to gather secret information and make observations. And also, I think, because Steve not knowing what I was going to say, that, you know, being assigned the task of providing a critique, if everyone gets so angry, I think he wanted to give me the opportunity to escape and not leave my name behind so you can't track me down and get me later. But anyhow, I think if there's any lesson to be learned from this, if Steve could sell me on doing this, I think he has the abilities and skills to sell monetary reform. So congratulations with that, Steve. Hey, anyhow, just getting to the point, I want to maybe give you a little thing I wrote about to maybe in a different way describe what my experience has been the last 3 days. You know, I want to thank all the speakers for this delicious, mind-twisting, mouth-watering feast of information. It's like ingesting sweet, green, aromatic, basil-flavored money with a hot curry blend of spiced conversation, the rich, tangy taste of a delectable marinara sauce over a tangled web of financial concept pasta, topped off with some red-hot chili peppers of social injustice for heat to really grab your attention. If you're not careful, it's enough to give anyone indigestion from over-ingestion. If it's not properly sequenced, balanced, and blended with an occasional break before the next course of tantalizing tidbits to give time for digestion, or rather reflection, combined with throwing in some occasional Tums, defined by me as time for understanding money, if needed in an emergency in case of acute indigestion caused by excessive mental ingestion. People are saying, what the heck's going on? I mean, this really is the generation that has to make some decision. Everything's coming together to push an issue. Something's trying to give birth. So, cooks are trying to do it too. You know, what I heard in the last 3 days was the fusion or blending of a monetary policy into different applications that will solve most of the world's problems. It's like a fusion cook trying to blend different cuisines from different countries and cultures. Trying to define AMI's role, keeping focus while blending in with other efforts in the proper proportions and sequences is a key issue and critical to the success of the effort. We saw this theme come up many times, different times during the conference. If we want more people to come to our restaurant and eat, we'll have to be conscious of their gastro limitations and taste. Beyond the cutting edge, but not too far out there to push them over the edge and lose them. So obviously what I'm talking about is about clarity and flow. So I put together some general comments about this and a few new concepts that I'd like to present while I have the mic and a few people are still left. With some specific recommendations for both AMI and AMI chapters. And I've organized this into 3 sections. It's recommendations for the conference, recommendations for chapters in AMI, general comments on AMI mission, and the need for clarity. Hey, before I do this, just to let you know, I run a group of nonprofit agencies. I work with government. I work with private businesses, real estate. We started working in a very distressed area. We lend money as a nonprofit. I guess in a way I am a banker. We have a $13 million loan fund. We've made 114 different loans to businesses. Understand that, have a lot of bankers on my board, interact with them regularly. In my business, if you can't talk one-on-one with a CFO about finance and money, you can't be in my business. And right now, starting by myself 14 years ago, the group of nonprofits that I run controls about $45 million in assets, raised about $10 million in foundation money. I've attended a meeting at the Federal Reserve Bank, invited to those types of meetings in Cleveland Bank. Have many different interactions with high-level government officials at the highest level, governors and presidents, and even down at the lowest level with the township supervisor. So I really have a very good understanding of the big picture of what it takes to operate a community, regionalization issues, global issues, outsourcing, offshoring, and how that all relates with corporate investments and so forth. And I'm currently, besides having my MBA, a bachelor's in engineering, I'm in the process of getting a second master's in social artistry, looking at the global perspective on many of these different issues. So, what I'm going to do, I wrote down here, and I don't have a power overhead for this, but I broke what I heard here into 11 different categories. Probably about 30 to 40 different topics or issues or solutions in each of those categories. And it could be a lot more, but I couldn't write fast enough. So the way I saw this, or I'd break the last 3 days mathematically, let me do it that way. Okay, what this basically says, and the way I see what I heard this week, was that the financial institutions need to change. They have too much power, and this gets into the monetary reform and the niche of this organization. Government needs to increase in its ability to take control and manage. Infrastructure we need to increase with investments. Health needs additional investments. The military needs to be decreased. The environmental regulation needs to be increased. Resource consumption needs to be decreased. Education needs to be increased. Parity could be under the Financial Monetary Act, but it's so complicated, I put it out by itself. Capitalism needs to be put under control, needs to be decreased, and religion needs to be increased. And if we're able to put this in this sequence, we'll create sustainability and peace on the planet. All right? Okay, so that's what you're talking about. Now, because it came up this conference, and this is something I'm very passionate about, if you take all of this and combine that, it's really the responsibility to make this possible. It's the responsibility of government to do this through regulation. So what we have left is government plus religion is equal to sustainability and world peace. There's one group that's most responsible for causing the problems that we're trying to address. That hasn't been mentioned, and that's organized religion. Everything you're talking about with greed, evil, selfishness, it's all because of organized religion has failed to deliver what the masters of those great religions really meant. So looking at this, government really represents the people, and religion represents beliefs. And that equals, if you put the people together with their beliefs, the shift in consciousness, as Dennis was talking about last night, that will lead to sustainability and world peace. That's exactly what all of you are working on right now, and I don't think you realize that you're doing that. What I want to show you just very quickly and I can do this. It's hard to, I'll just put this down for a second.
Fell down, I think, the other order.
Yeah, the problem with overheads is that they're so slippery. There's basically a sequence going on in society that beliefs lead to behaviors, lead to policies, which lead to programs, which lead to outcomes, which leads to the current world situation. And those beliefs are about life or God, however you want to picture it. This is really my passion, because the core issues on the belief system, that's where I'm going to focus my initial efforts, and then move on to this. But this conference has been excellent for me, just what I was looking for. So I appreciate that. I gave Steve a book called The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist, and I highly recommend it, because what it will do is give you a picture of the culture that you're growing up here in America, and the imperialization that's going on, and the strong desire for materialism and consumption. I think her book really tries to show that a lot of people have a whole different perspective on how to live versus what's here in the United States. Right now in the country, the golden rule, I learned that very quickly with politics. There are two interpretations of the golden rule, which really could summarize the struggle that's going on the planet. And that is, he who has the golden rules versus loving your neighbor. So what's your interpretation of the golden rule? And that kind of paraphrases or summarizes the subject that we're dealing with. But what this also says is government is our level of our spiritual beliefs demonstrated. And we're confused in this country about the separation of church and state, but actually how we treat our poor, how we care for each other is a level of how we, and how we do that is a level of our beliefs about each other. So what we really have is a spiritual crisis going on the planet, and especially in our country. And in that book with Lynn Twist, she talks about a meeting with Mother Teresa. Just to tell this quick story here, because I think it's very important. Mother Teresa, it was an idol of Lynn. Lynn has done probably more to help reduce the number of starvation deaths on the planet, raising money to address world hunger than probably anybody alive today. And she always wanted to meet Mother Teresa. So she goes to India, gets the opportunity to meet with her, drives 45 minutes to where she works. She describes in the book how she gets on the doorstep and there's some crumpled newspaper and she picks it up to move it out of the way and there's a tiny infant in the newspaper. So a nun comes to the door and she goes, well, here's another baby. And next thing you know, she gets involved in working with the children in the orphanage. Time passes by and finally, like an hour later, you can meet Mother Teresa. So they go down the hall. Lynn's crying the whole time during this meeting, and sitting next to Mother Teresa at this table at the end of the hall. And right in the middle of it, these two wealthy Indians come in with the gold bracelets and everything, walking down the hall. She sees them coming, extremely wealthy with the turbans and you name it. And they said, here, we want a picture. They gave Lynn the camera and said, here, just interrupted this very special moment of her entire lifetime. They said, I want a picture. And they grabbed Mother Teresa, literally said, stand up. Here, you take the picture. Here's the camera. Here's Mother Teresa, take it. And so she took one. She goes, no. The woman said, look at me. And she grabbed Mother Teresa's head because she was bent over at that point in time for working so many years with children, and turned her head to make her look at her and took the picture. And then they said, took the camera back and walked out. Lynn was very upset. Mother Teresa sat down, calmly carried on the conversation. It was time to go, and left. And she left, and Lynn had to go back. And Lynn wrote a letter to Mother Teresa and said, I'm really sorry, how it ended there, but I was really upset. And Mother Teresa wrote a letter back chastising Lynn. She said, you have to understand there are worse types of poverty than physical poverty. It's poverty of the soul. And that's what the West is suffering from. So, I heard here at the conference about, the evilness of this. Maybe there are a few people that approach it this way, but what we're really looking at, evil, E-V-I-L. Evil, I say evil, which is more like E-V-O-L, or you could say evil, like E-F-I-L. It's live, love, life, just spelled backwards. People are going in the wrong direction. They're going in the wrong direction. And we have a tendency to want to vilify a lot of different people, especially these different institutions, like the banking industry. But I have a lot of friends that work in the banking industry. They're just caught up in the system. And they don't know it. They were taught this way by their fathers, by society. They feel they're actually making good loans and helping people realize their dreams. And if we want to spread this word out, and we go out with this anger in our hearts, or in our guts, we're going to lose a lot of people. We have to take a higher perspective. That's the reason for the whole story with Lynn Twist. So, we were making fun about the institutions, and but if you think about it, an institution, is where they used to send people that were insane, and exactly, they are caught up in some insanity, and we have to keep that in mind whether we're dealing with government, or dealing with the banking industry, or the corporations. They're just caught up in this insanity, and our job is trying to wake them up. I apologize that this fell all over the floor because we had that delay. I also wanted to make a point that when my father's parents came from the old country, and a lot of those European immigrants, and maybe most of you might have that heritage, they came here to find a better life. In fact, they were told, marry that man over there because he has a good job. You know what? Why don't you I was told, you're really smart. Why don't you become a doctor, a lawyer? You'll be the first in the Krajovic family, and you'll make it. So our parents and grandparents have been telling us that if you get money, you earn respect, right? And that's going on. That's why we got this issue going on here in the West. And we have to look at ourselves and why we think this way. The question comes into when is enough enough? And I don't know if you've ever done this, but I have it with me here. Another way of looking what everyone's been talking about here is from a different perspective. is looking at the world's wealthy. This is something else that's growing very exponentially. Here is the Forbes 100 list. So you add that up, those top 400 people, it's 1.125 trillion. And I'm estimating that probably if you take the top 1,000 wealthiest people in the country, it comes about 1.425 trillion. And if you assume that because they can't spend that money because they already have everything that they need, that they're going to go ahead and invest it with the best investors in the country and probably get an average rate of 10%. And using the 72 rule, that means that money will double every 7.2 years. So basically in one generation, in 30 years, that wealth in just 1,000 people will be $24 trillion. So I think that's something else that needs to be added in this argument. While we're looking at the debt side, you're looking at this incredible wealth creation with a very few people. I'm not even talking about the other people that are adding on into that list. It's remarkable. So the question is, when is enough enough? And I just very quickly, because I don't have time, but it's the first time in the history of our planet that people living on the planet can literally have everything the biosphere has to offer. And what amount of money does it need to experience that? Wealth should be defined as use and access, not ownership, because you can't own anything. You can't really own it. You just temporarily use it. You're a steward. That word was used here about land. And there's a maximum amount of money, and this comes up with the Glenn's presentation about maximum income. I agree with the concept, but I think that through free enterprise, if someone comes up with a one little pill that you drop in your car and it works, that person should have a right to have everything the world could offer them if they so desire. But I bet you that could be $5 million a year of income. Not $1 million a day, and there are people making $1 million a day. In fact, one of the people on the cover, I last week or the week before, I had a meeting scheduled, but it got canceled with one of those people on the cover of Forbes magazine. And you're making $1 million a day. For what purpose? So, government then should have the option of taking that money to put it back into the system, or those people can give it to the charities of their choice and be highly honored in society as great philanthropists. Because otherwise it serves no purpose, because you have everything our spaceship Earth, it's working through space, can offer you. Andrew Carnegie, the wealthiest man in the world at the turn of the century at 350 million, couldn't have a fresh Scottish brew when he wanted it because the planes weren't there to bring it to him. Today we can live like kings and queens getting pineapples and strawberries in January that people never had before. So there is a limitation. If greed is the peak, the maximum peak of greed would to have everything that the world has to offer. Beyond that you don't need anymore. Okay, what I'd like to do is to shift right now to the conference. And I have some comments and suggestions about what I saw here. I guess Steve's not here, but he did do a great job considering the limited resources that he has. The Chicago chapter worked to support the group, I think, well. However, the agenda, in my opinion, needs to be organized thematically, and it should be shown on the agenda, maybe within these categories that I just talked about. We need to probably, I think it was in more on the online, but within the agenda, we probably should have a 2-sentence description of what each person's going to talk about to prepare the audience for what's going to be said. I think there should be a handout on each speaker about the books that they've written and maybe their availability to speak at a local chapter or another group that people could take with them and say, hey, could I give you a call? I might want to have you come speak in Pittsburgh. That would help get the word out. 2.5 to 3 hours without a break is too long for any conference. I think 90 minutes is optimum, 2 hours max, so that needs to be incorporated. I think also every speaker should have a copy of their handouts because we're trying to communicate the mission. And Ben, who left here, had his PowerPoint available. They took the time to print it out and everything else, and they were selling them for $6. So you can make a few pennies on it, but make it easy for everyone to get the information. Because a big part of this mission is to communicate. I think it might be a good opportunity to provide more like a committee format where people can assemble to share our ideas and to brainstorm. I think the last example of what we went through in the last session. A lot of people, one person said they learned more maybe in the last 2 hours than they did the whole conference because you got into applications. So if you broke into maybe different topics or provide more opportunity for questions in a safe environment, I think that would really help for people like me to understand the concepts more. Also, the experts should get together because I think they need recommendations to help improve the clarity and simplicity of their presentations that could be used to get to the public. That is a continuous theme here where people are trying to understand it. It's like, oh, here, Mike, you walk in, here's another book, and you're walking out like this while Steve's patting your back, showing you the door and say, okay, now form your chapter. I'm walking out like this. It's overwhelming to someone. See, you got everything you need to know. Just read those 30 books and you're all set. So, that's how it can feel like for someone coming into this organization. We also need a list of all attendees, their contact information. Most conferences that you go to, you have that already prepared, titles and so forth that should be added. Talked about the brainstorming. I also think maybe it might be time, so that you don't lose attendance of the senior people, that the first day should be like an introductory orientation day with general concepts and definitions. And then you can move into more serious discussions on the second day, and perhaps the program should be agended or revised to fit that format, especially if you think of getting more people to this conference. I mean, I had to work hard to pay attention, to learn this up here, to follow what all of you were saying there, and most people can't keep up with me with the way I think. I'm always told to slow down. So it was a challenge. That's right. Well, because I got a lot at the end. Okay. Also, if there's an opportunity here with these authors to maybe set up speaking engagements, interviews with radios while they're assembled here at a time. It's a great PR opportunity, which I think that could be capitalized on. Students, get the young people involved. That first orientation day, that probably should be free. Anybody that wants to come in as a student, it could be free. And perhaps maybe it's free for everyone, open to the general public. Come in and listen to this. It's basically for people that may want to form a chapter to see someone how they would communicate the message to a group of the general public. If you fly in like we did from Pittsburgh, we're going to stay for the next 2 days and pay the conference fee. You need to give some thought to that. And also at the time with discussion, sit in a circle, move into a different environment. This is a classroom instruction. I'm doing 80% of the talking. You're not really engaged in what I'm saying that much. And if you could move everyone into a circle with breakout rooms, maybe with more intensive brainstorming discussions. I'm talking about shifting the environment and format rather than the classic classroom instruction that kids revolt against today. But I'm up here on the stage because this is the format, but you might want to think about that. Okay, let me just see if I can unshuffle here and find the next page. Okay, for AMI in general, the first thing I have here are activities of AMI. Again, I run a group of nonprofit agencies, very busy with meetings. I have probably about 40 formal meetings a year that I have to operate. I have board meeting minutes going out all the time that have to be reviewed. The next meeting's coming up with all these different organizations. So responsibilities with Steve, with his big staff, he's basically funding himself to do this, which is remarkable, but would be to take care of all that administration. I don't know if it's a nonprofit, you should have a board meeting, you should have a board of directors, produce some minutes, approve certain things to be in compliance, and you're a 501c3, right? Which is another issue. So, you've got to take care of the routine administrative duties. Need to raise money, talked about that. Need to have an annual meeting. You need to coordinate the chapters. You need to provide communication materials. You need to provide support materials. You need to create a forum for both sharing and developing ideas and policies, which I think, again, the last session needed a lot more time. You need to coordinate the national advocacy. You need to coordinate the national public relations campaign. And most importantly, I think as said with Glenn, the one speaker, that we need to be thinking about building relationships with other organizations. So, I think, Slide this down a bit more. One thing that's desperately needed, if the mission to get the word out, to build congressional support, is we need to make it easier to start chapters. And I think right now, when I showed they were walking out with a stack full of books and say, with a pat in the back and say, "Good luck, sucker," you handle it on your, you answer the questions to the general public. That's a really fearful situation. So we really need a good chapter starter kit. And I think this should be a priority over the organization. And that kit, the core of that kit would be a presentation, 2 presentations, one 25-minute long and one 45-minute long. And it should be in the PowerPoint format or overheads and provide all that stuff. And let me just give you an example of, because I grew up in the environment, don't bring up an issue unless you have a solution, or at least a recommendation. Let me present to you what I think might be the format or potential format for that. Apologize for the delay. Everything was organized, but the space up here is so limited, and these overheads just like float on air and they get away from you. Okay, so I think to summarize what you're saying, what this whole thing was about, was government provides support for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the government prints money, which makes investments, to create opportunities for industry and jobs, to bring life, happiness onto the planet. And people want to make a contribution to the collective good. That's a problem with our country. Taxes, government is taking their money because they lost their trust in it, that it won't be spent wisely, when what it should be is saying, I voluntarily want to contribute to support the collective good of the exercise. So it's a tax contribution that right now, because our level of consciousness isn't there,
when you do that, there's power.
Have to be a taking. So
every person
keeping that in
one time
mind,
in your life, when you stand for monetary policy.
Let me take a crack at this too.
Whoa. That you're talking about something.
And this is risky. I'm glad most of the speakers aren't here because
the pillars upon which,
but there's still a lot of
this
senior people
structure of money is built in this
been
society.
working on
But
this
it
for
also,
years. But what I heard,
this position, it
I
also
took a
gives
shot
us the
at it.
ability to change everything.
I have here, the
That's why I
purpose
can
of
stand
money
here and
is
talk.
to make possible the transfer of the
Because
fruits of the labors
I
of
found
the
out the
people
truth.
into a
The
medium
truth is you can take
to
a
make it
stand.
easier for people
And
to
if you're
trade
willing
between
to
themselves
do that,
and to
you
contribute
come
to
to
support
a
the
new
collective
condition
good.
where you create new possibilities, not just for yourself,
Okay.
but for
That's
others.
how I understood what you're trying to say.
What I did,
The purpose of government
others
is to provide
can
a
do
safe
if they realize that it's possible to do
place
it.
where elected representatives of the
And,
people
offices are
can
temporary.
decide with collective
No one holds an
wisdom
office forever.
how best to utilize the fruits of the people's
But
labor for the collective
human
good
heart,
of all
it's
in
time.
ways that support
Integrity
life,
is time.
liberty, and the pursuit
When you
of
stand for
happiness.
something, it inspires others to do the same
That's what
So
the
this group
basis
here
of our country was founded on.
thing. Has such enormous
And
potential.
when it started as a dream
Don't ever doubt
and ideals of men,
change the world.
fortunately men at that time,
Each person here
the
with
different
integrity,
ideal, a higher spiritual
with your
value
insight,
principle to say, hey, you can worship
with
God
your
any way you
willingness
want
to
to.
say what
Separation
you
of church
think,
and state.
despite
That's a higher spiritual principle.
what others might say.
And everyone had a responsibility for the
This
collective good.
is what
That has been
life is
distorted
all about.
into every man for himself in America today.
So I wanted to share that story with you
And we need to reverse
because it
that.
ties in all the themes of
So
the
let
undue
me
influence of capital,
show that same
monopoly power, of
thing
the attempt to crush the
linearly.
public interest.
So if I was making this
Occasionally we get the
presentation
chance to take a
to the
stand.
general public,
And when we do, we can change it all. So
again,
want
this
to,
is the way it
ask
was
you
at
for a
one
few
time.
moments. I'm going to ask Elizabeth.
Like a
Did you
story.
want to?
Just as I showed you with that circle, government invest money in the economy,
this
create opportunity
partnership
for the people,
that
make
I
a
am,
tax contribution back to the
that
government.
Elizabeth and I have put
That's
together
the way it
here
was.
is something that enables
is
me to
balance.
do what I do in a
Let me
more
just,
powerful way than I've ever been able to
what
do.
do I mean by investments?
Past.
I could see with a PowerPoint,
But
you could
thank
bring this
you.
up very sequentially so people could follow. Press a button, the next thing comes up. So what you have is the government
Because
invests
it's been
money,
said
invest and spend.
before,
And
we
what
don't
you
do
mean
anything
invest?
alone.
Well, they invest like in health.
We do nothing.
They
alone.
invest in social programs for the
And
needy.
now
They
you're all a
invest
part.
in the
You're
military.
all a part of
They
each
invest
other's
in
journey.
infrastructure or education.
Each of us.
You know, Jefferson, you need
now
an
a part of
educated
each other's
population to
journey.
make a democracy work.
So let's,
and you
move
invest for the
forward
public good,
with
and that brings money into the
indomitable
economy that
courage,
creates jobs, and people make that
with
tax
a willingness
contribution
to,
the collective
stand
good.
up
So
and
that's
speak
what I'm
out,
talking about. I'm pretending you guys
to,
are just newcomers. This is
in
the
the
first
words
day.
of Shelley and Prometheus Unbound,
Then,
to
something
defy
intervened in the
power
process.
which seems omnipotent.
Thank you.
That's where there is joy and hope. So, Elizabeth, can I mention it?
Okay, then something intervened in the process. Instead of the government printing the money, the banks are loaning the money to the government.
Hi everyone.
And
I'm
now
not
the
gonna
government
speak
has
for
to pay interest
But I
back to
think
the banks.
from what
And
Dennis has said,
they also
there
are
really is so
loaning
much
money or
hope in
borrowing
this
money
room.
from countries and
We're not
corporations
only
like China and
theorists,
Japan
we
today
are people who
that the
live
government
in
has to pay them
society.
bond
There are
interest.
people
As a
around us who we
result,
can reach out to
the amount of money the
in our
government has to
everyday lives.
invest is
We don't
less
have to
because
talk
it's
about
minus
the
the
heavy
debt
aspects
interest.
of monetary
There's less
reform
investment,
in its
which
theory.
goes over
We
to
can
the
really
people
talk about things,
who then
seek-
have to
seek
pay taxes
opportunities to
plus
talk
the
about
percent
things
of
that
debt.
relate it
And what does
to
it gets out of
everybody
balance?
else's
What
life.
happens means there's less
The
investments,
speaker
higher
that Dennis was
taxes, less
talking about
income, and a
around 2
greater
o'clock
need
this
to borrow.
afternoon, challenged my opinion in some way, because he said that we'll always have to come up against conflict.
So
Being a
now,
peaceful girl,
because there's a greater need to borrow, and I know with the history, and
Focus
Steve
on.
is really into the history and
So
everything,
I was thinking about,
and what the sequence is, the people really don't care
in our
about
own
that,
lives.
okay?
To find
So what they
that
really need to
opening
do is say is
where we
because
can
there's this
connect
need to
with another
borrow,
person, we can
banks
connect
step
with
in
another
in a
community.
much more
I had a wonderful
prominent way, and you could get into the
happening
fractional
a couple of
reserve
days ago. I
system
did a
and how
piece
that
for,
works.
across
But now
the
banks,
flyer,
because people
which is
have to
53
borrow,
miles.
because they don't have,
But
they have
the
less
night before
income,
my
they
final
gotta borrow
leg, I
more
went
from the
to a hip
banks.
hop awards ceremony.
And now they're paying that
By,
interest.
who was invited
So
by a
now
chap who
it's
found
way
out
out of
about
balance.
my peace walk.
There's
and
much
invited
less
me there
investment, much
to,
higher taxes,
to
more
promote
debt,
it.
more bankruptcies, less
Invite me to
disposable
come on the last
income,
leg.
greater need to
The
borrow,
next
less
day,
savings,
I had another
and
10 people
selling
join
off
me
of
on this
assets,
peace walk. They
public and
provided
private,
music,
to make
they
ends
provided
meet.
this
That's
sound
what's
system,
going
they
on
provided
today.
everything that I hadn't had,
And
and they were from a completely
so if you
new
present it
community, so
like
that
this,
I was part of.
follow up,
Beyond that, when there was this chap met me where
Say,
I was
well, you
set
don't
up
believe
the
me?
sound system.
look
I
at
was
the
with
national
a
debt.
Japanese journalist.
Look at the
who
national
was,
debt.
taking photographs and talking
Look
to
at
me
personal
now, so.
debt.
And he said,
People.
talk to this man, just
Was
stand
it Ben
there and
said
talk
that
to this man. So I started
those
talking
quick
about monetary
cash
reform.
places went from
And this
300
man
to
was wearing
about
his big bag of
10,000
jeans
in
and
about
they're
10
hanging around
years?
his bottom and all his shirt
Look
was
at the
hanging
savings
out,
rate
his
in the
big
country
cap.
for the lower
I hugged him,
80%.
his
I
cap
used to
fell
say the
off, and I
savings
did it
rate,
twice
what
over
Charles
the day,
mentioned
kept
yesterday
falling
about
off.
well, the
Anyway,
top 17% are actually have most of the
cut a long
savings. They're
story
saving
short,
with the bond.
I started talking to him about
80%
monetary
hard.
reform.
And look at bankruptcies,
And this
and
man
as I
said,
said, the
oh, I
quick
know, I
cash.
was a mortgage broker. I know how money was created. This is really
think
what we
you do
need
this,
the
you got
African
it.
American community to know about.
You
I
got
want
it.
to write some music
Okay,
with
you
you.
got their attention.
I want to do a film.
So that's
I want
where
you to
AMI
come to
comes
my
in.
church
Here are our
and talk about
recommendations. Boil it down.
This
Don't
is
make it too
incredible. I'm doing
complicated.
a
We
flaky
need you to
peace
support
walk.
this.
I'm
I
talking
didn't
about
listen to
something
everything,
which
but
is
we
very dear
covered
to
that at
me
the
and very
conference.
dear to
And then we
what I
need to
think
say,
is America as well. But I'm
okay,
finding an avenue
what
here
will this
for
do?
monetary
How will
reform
this
in a
change
community and a constituency that I
poverty,
wouldn't have
the environment?
automatically
How will
thought
this
being
reduce
appropriate
war?
or open to my ideas.
I think,
And now this whole world has opened up to
you know,
me.
if it was
This whole
me,
community
you know,
that
that's
really
the
needs to
format
know about
that I
this,
would
because
use.
they
I
really
would
are
put
becoming the
a
slaves
presentation
to the
like
system.
this on the
And I
web in
invite you
PDF format
to
so
find
people
that
can download
opportunity
it.
in your own
I
lives,
would
to reach
create a
out to people
CD
who
that could be
wouldn't
mailed
normally
out
do,
and handed
to talk to people on their
to
level
other
and bring
people.
them along with you. As part of this peace walk, and I'm not going to talk for long, but as part of this peace walk, the night before, that same evening actually of meeting
I
this
think with
hip-hop
the
movement,
operation of the
I was
chapters,
invited on a radio show.
you know, of course
And it was
there's
a
a mission
radio
in these
show
chapters,
which
and that
was,
mission may be to get the word out, and then you need to have the goals for the chapter.
And I was really nervous.
You know,
because
maybe
it
a
was
goal
one of my
like we
first
want to
ones
see a
when I
presentation
first
per
did it.
month. We
I
want
don't
to see
want it to
12
be-
presentations
what
given
am I
to
gonna
different
say?
groups
And the gentleman who introduced
every
me to
year.
them
We want to
said,
meet
"Oh, you
with the
gotta go
Congress
with the
people.
precautions."
We want to meet with the
so
staff
nervous when
and
I
Senate people. But first
No,
meet with
I'm not
the
going to
staff.
embrace
And
the idea
as
of
I think
conflict.
Glenn said, build
I
a
know that
relationship
where our
with them
differences
first.
are.
But you know,
But
if
that's not
it
a
really
problem. I was walking from the United
doesn't
Nations
work,
International Day of Peace. The other night.
having involved in
I
politics,
wanted
next
to
meeting
talk
I'd have,
about
I'd take 10
issuing
people
of
with me.
currency, maybe
Yes, 10
increasing
to
the
1.
power of government a bit.
Say, we really would like a meeting with the congressman or congresswoman.
But I started talking
And
to
by
them.
the way, if
And we won each other over, and we had the most
until we
fantastic
meet with them,
conversation. Instead of being on there for
we
5
got another
minutes, I
12
was on for the
presentations
rest of
lined
the
up. We're going to tell
45
people,
minutes.
and
of
you
the
know what?
show.
Your congressman
And we were talking
refuses
about
to meet
this.
with us.
So again, I invite you to
You'll get their
embrace
attention
what
eventually. Be
you
nice
can
about it,
reach
but
and
eventually
meet
you have
other
to
people.
start, and it's a
And
fact.
not
You're not. It really
Rather
isn't a
than
threat. I'm
fight
just telling you what we're
resistance
doing
because you're
because
gonna
we're
just
so
create
passionate about how
friction.
important this is.
Really
to
move
our
with
children's
whatever it
future.
is that you can move with. Find the humanity.
And he should
find
make
the
an
soul,
effort,
find the
because there will be a
social
transition within
situation,
this
whatever
country
it
and
may
continue
be,
because
and
we
go
have the
for it,
wrong
because
type
I
of
know we
people in
really can
office. We
change the
don't have
world.
enough people
When I was
like
18
Dennis.
and I first
We need
became
people
aware of
coming from
monetary
their heart.
reform
Remember, just he
through
said,
Peter
my
Jalo and through
God, my
Ken
heart and my
Palmerton,
head
I'm
is
so
full.
pleased you're here,
Just
Ken.
like
I
the three
really am.
brains.
You know,
And how that
who would
worked.
have
We
dreamt
need more true
that
public
following my
servants in
intuition, or
office,
following my
and
love
as more
and
people
inspiration
shift
of
and
this
want to get in
subject,
this, the
that
leaders
meeting
will emerge.
Stephen at the House of
So
Lords,
those
following
young
my
candidates,
intuition
those
of
people that are
coming
involved
out
as
to
he
America,
started the
giving up a
city
good
council
job in
meeting,
London
they're
and coming
looking
to
for
be his
something
volunteer
that's different, that's
for 6
unique.
months. In the second week, I would meet
don't
Dennis. And here we
bypass
are.
it. Don't focus all your
Yeah,
efforts on
things
the
really do move. We're not talking about incremental change. We're talking about a transformational
also the group
shift
needs a
that we
new
can all
slogan.
be part of, and we are
And
all part of. And everybody in this room is doing it and
Because
has
I mentioned,
the
I
ability
think the
to
real
do
power,
even
and
more
I
of
was
it.
up
So with
in
that, I'm going to say
Washington
good
meeting
night
with
and God
some
bless you
women
and thank you so
who,
much for
have
being here.
really understand the internet and how it works and what's going on.
Thank you, Dennis.
And probably only a handful of people in the world
Very
know
inspiring.
exactly what's going
Looking
on.
forward to working
And how you can truly use the power of that to get the word out to people.
to achieving great
And there are many organizations with that formula I wrote up there that really would like to hear this because this
Again, I
is
wanna
a
thank
critical
all of you for your
foundation piece to building
help in
a
making
new world.
this happen. We have
To
another
survive, we're
day
talking about
tomorrow.
species survival here.
And
Forget
we'll
building it, we're
discuss
talking about even
tomorrow
trying to
the,
survive it. So,
American mind.
I really think, what's AMI all
Discuss
about?
the
It's about
monetary
improving
transparency
sustainability,
act
reducing
we
poverty,
are
and achieving
working
peace. That's what the
together
Monetary
with
Institute's
groups
about. That's why all these speakers were here.
City.
Now, I think maybe you could say
That's looking
increasing employment,
So things
if you want to add that in there, but
possibilities.
trying in something like this, and the
So
center of that
when I
might
hear-
be a picture of the globe.
when I
'Cause
hear,
that's what you're talking about. Talked about the world
Oh,
here.
I'll use the word negative.
With
But I
you
hear
know,
negative.
Glenn talked
appraisals
about,
that, oh, you can't change
it's very important, that's why he's here.
Nothing will change.
There are many groups. You start putting up and say,
Again.
that's what we stand for. You know how many social
Maybe
groups?
it's going to be hard.
Do you know how many activist groups,
What I heard
environmental groups
at
want to
Chamber
hear what
say
you
might
have
be
to say, and you can tell them how this is
It's going to
really
take
can
whatever
solve
time
your
it
problem
takes.
or help solve your problem?
We'll make it happen as soon as
You
we
know,
can.
tons of people that want to talk to you.
But again,
So,
always remember,
Also, look at the Rotaries,
What
Kiwanis
we're
and
trying
Lions.
to
They're always
do
looking for new
is
speakers.
good. Really
Go out, meet with people.
for
Absolutely, get their emails and phone numbers. I mean, this should be written down in the starter
of the
kit. That's
people of this
basically what I'm
country.
talking about.
That's got to mean something.
And AMI should,
I mean,
again,
we
have a
have to
photo
make
of the
sure
world
that
somewhere. Steve has it
people
on his
understand.
book, Dennis has it in his office. That's what we're talking about, with that global
Thank you.
perspective.
And, that's it.
Steve, you're still here. I thought your presentation on history was wonderful. You're probably as good as anybody in the world on that. But as the only person that's willing to accept the burden of being executive director with no money, here at this conference, when you have these people assembled, you really need to probably earmark some time for some of the perfunctory administrative functions and more discussions. I mean, it's good to have the history, say, I'm history here, but you need to be on the agenda doing some of the things that I'm talking about doing right now. You also need, in my opinion, 2 sheets of definitions, one for the general public and one for the experts, to explain things simply. You need a 1-page explanation of inflation, and I think, Dick, you're as good as anybody I've ever heard, and what you said here today, somehow that needs to be captured because that's always the question. Also, we need a 1-page on probably the 10 most common myths about money. I think Steve already has something like that, but that should be in the kit. And something else I didn't see, which I think would have really helped a lot of people out here, I didn't hear anyone talk about trends and timelines and phasing. For example, if I can pull this up here. It all can't happen at the same time. So if you have time here, and perhaps this is adoption of a world minimum wage. And this is a reduction of the need of tariffs and currency exchange rates. And I think more presenters need to say, look, this is phasing. Even the Monetary Act, we're saying this is a start, and a lot of other issues are going to be mentioned. Steve said, well, this is the first phase. Well, that's not expressed really anywhere or communicated this way in these discussions. You know, you guys are the leaders, ladies and gentlemen. You're the leaders, and you're going to start something here, and it's going to move down, and things are going to change and be adopted as we continue to address these issues. Use examples. Absolutely not enough examples. I really love learning by examples. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you take 100,000 here, and Ben, who's not here, I thought he did the best job of any presenter of giving examples with balance sheets, which would help people to understand. The structure of AMI, I'm sorry I'm going so long, but you guys, we're on a tight schedule. It's a 501c3. A 501c3 is not really permitted to do lobbying activities. Lobbying defined as influencing legislation or votes. They're allowed to go work with government to apply for grants, but you're a 501c3. And the 501c3, if you do lobbying, it's limited based on the percent of revenue, and you have to file a report to the IRS if you're doing it. So the comment was made, I think yesterday or the day before, hey, when this really starts hitting and the big boys start coming after you, you better make sure you got your laundry all cleaned up. And right now, the group won't. It's not there. And it's not Steve's fault. My goodness, if he could hire somebody who had the money to do it, it all goes back to that problem. Lobbying is done with like a Chamber of Commerce is a 501c6. I run 2 C3s, a C4, and I also have a for-profit affiliate, which is not making any money. but anyhow, the lobbying efforts could be under a C6. The educational initiatives where foundations can make grants to spread the word, the communication, that could be under the C3. And the organization needs to be thinking about that structurally. So, nearing the end here, key concerns or obstacles. Today, people are overwhelmed, confused, and afraid. Things are collapsing, things they knew. That's the reason why there's a rise in fundamentalism. This is crazy. They go on TV and they see this happening all over the world. They don't understand it. A human being living today is going through about 100 times the number of experiences their grandparents did. If you look at the technological revolutions and everything, emails and you name it, and this going on, it's an overload. They're scared to death. It's fear. It's absolutely fear. You want to go in there about the banking industry? You know how many millions of people will lose their jobs through this act? You know how many military people, millions upon millions, will lose their jobs as a result of this? Keep that in mind when you're making the presentation and say, look, we're doomed right now. This is the only alternative to deal with the issues that Glenn talked about for your children. Another issue is the inflation. I said that's absolutely imperative because that's the number one thing that people bring up when government starts printing money, because it's been brainwashed by the educational system. That's a problem. So we need that explanation. Distrust of government. So this is one big problem. We're saying we want to put the hands and the power back in the government. Well, right now we do not trust our government. So this is why that formula, so many things have to happen at the same time. So many things have to happen at the same time, and we need to network with other organizations. Negative attitudes, I talked about that, the condemning of others. Don't do it. Have the compassion of Mother Teresa and realize these people are just thinking that if they only had more, they'd be happy. And I've never met anyone say, I finally figured it out, but once I finally got that Ferrari and that big house on the beach and everything else, it really came down to love with another person. That relationship. I mean, they're wounded people. Keep that in mind. If you come from that angle, I did a demonstration in Oregon where I had a rope, which I have one here. And going fishing. he's a Republican, I'm a Democrat. So I go, Democrat. We'll say Republican. Democrat. Democrat. Then he goes, and then I had another row. It's like pro-choice. And the next person goes, pulling that way, pro-life. And it's like monetary reform, no monetary reform. War, no war. Doing like this, I had 10 ropes in the middle, 20 people in a circle, and they're pulling. I said, okay, now we're going all at once. They started yelling at each other. That's exactly where the world is faced today, and that's why people are turning around. Go, I don't even want to hear it. If you come from that same energy, that perspective, and what they'll say is, you know what it is? You just want the money. The bankers want the money. It's the same. You're just doing it to take the money from someone else to put in the hands of poor people. You want the money, I want the money. The strongest will survive. You can't come from that perspective and be successful with what's going on in the world today. Because like I said, we're fighting for species survival. In closing, I wish the whole group was here, because I tell you that you really are the gentle warriors of today. It's like really, I want to walk up to each of you like, Bob, look in your eyes and say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Even if you weren't the presenter, thank you so much for what you're doing for my children. I got 2 children. Thank you. Really mean it. As Gandhi said, you gotta be the change that you want to see in the world. Mother Teresa said, go forth without concern of success or achievement. Because if you set certain goals and you don't meet them, you'll get discouraged and stop doing it. No, it's because of who you are and what you stand for. That's why we do this. I want to finish with a story as an example of sort of what Dennis talked about last night, about everyone being able to make a difference. And I heard this story given by his motivational speaker, Andy Andrews. I don't know if you ever heard of Alex Borlaug, but he says, I guess a few years ago, he was being honored, highly honored, for saving 2 billion lives on the planet. And Alex Borlaug was the man who came up with a hybrid version of corn that could grow in arid climates. And as a result of that, they're saying that he kept 2 billion people from starving to death. He was highly honored. But if you take a step back, if anyone remembers Henry Wallace, I believe was the first vice president under President Truman. Is that right?
Yeah. He was vice president of Franklin Roosevelt.
Roosevelt. I was writing this down last night, so I think I got that wrong. Thank you, Dick. And he decided that he wanted to appropriate money to agricultural research. And he was only in there for a short time because he switched vice presidents. But before he left office, he said, I'm going to get this thing established in the Southwest. And he hired Alex Borlaug to run it. So who really should get the award for saving the 2 billion people? But let's take the story back one more step. Henry Wallace, his father, I believe, went to teach in Iowa as a professor. And he had a student under him. His dad had a student under him. And Henry Wallace was a young boy, and he said to the student, I'd like you to kind of babysit and take care of my son while I'm doing this. And that gentleman's name was George Washington Carver. So George Washington Carver instilled in that young boy the power of plants and what they could do. And he inspired him. So tell me, who's responsible for saving the 2 billion people? One more step back in time. Goes to George's mother, Nancy Washington. It was a time when slavery was allowed in this country. And Nancy Washington, being a slave, she had a really good friend called Susan. And Susan was married to Moses. And one day, I believe they're called the Quantrill Raiders, and this was in Missouri, I think, came in and attacked the slave village and kidnapped some people and took them away. And Nancy and her son were gone. Susan was very distraught and said, Moses, you got to go do something about this. You got to go do something about this. So he was moved by his wife's concern for her best friend, and he put the word out in the community, and finally about a week later he heard. So in the middle of the night, he took his only horse, middle of the winter. I get emotional I think about this. He rode across the border to Kansas, and there he met 4 raiders with burlap sacks over their heads, and he traded his horse for a sack that they threw down to the ground that he picked up and put next to his arms, and he had to walk back in the middle of winter to keep that child warm. And he said, I'm going to raise you in honor of your mother. And Moses Carver said, I'm going to call you George Washington Carver. So you tell me, who saved the 2 billion people? One act of human compassion can change the world, and that's what Dennis was saying yesterday. And I think that's exactly what all of you are doing here. And just God bless you and keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael. Can you take some questions here? I think we have enough time for some questions.
Hello. Hello. Hi. I'm from old Europe, as Rummy might have said, and I have to take a message back to old Europe and translate all of the things that I've heard this week. I knew a lot of them before, but boy, have I got some work ahead of me. So, the other good news, the Bromsgrove meeting in Birmingham, we do sit round in a sort of informal group. But like here, what I gather is that we're a discussion group and not an action group, and this came up this week. So this will be changed. About the only strength I have is I was employed by an American company back home on the selling side, and at the end of it all, it was sell the sizzle, not the sausage. I guess I'm going to take all of this on board and take it back with me. So thank you very much.
Thank you for a great presentation, and I wonder if you are going to make copies of your notes and the overheads and give to Stephen so that he can give them to us in the chapter, because I think you've given us an outline of tremendous things to do.
Yeah, Steve kept me busy. I was trying to learn what you're saying and work on this at the same time.
I would just add that Steve has said this or would say this, if you actually could develop your notes into that starter kit that you are suggesting, you're probably as good as anybody to help that go, and there may be some other people who can help you do that, but it would be great to have you
Get it to
do
me
that.
in a week. I want to comment. I really enjoyed those parts, and I listen also, frankly, because you and your dad are helping quite directly in other ways. You know, these are the 2 fellows that pledged us $1,000, and that gets my attention. But the money part is it's a necessary precondition, and then we have the ideas, which I've taken as many notes here as on anyone else that's spoken, and I appreciate this very much. The question is turning it into reality, and that is the hard part, because that takes hours and people and work. And so anything that you can suggest, I love your little circle insignia, for example, and that's I can see that can be a powerful addition. Any kind of continuing actual written out things would be very helpful.
Yeah, thanks. I'll work on that. I just, the women in Washington are calling me. They want help there, and other people. And I grew up in the trenches. I didn't, working for my dad. Cleaning carpets and stuff, manual labor to different positions, and so I got a good feel for the big picture. I know how to get things done. I don't even care what I accomplished yesterday. It's where I'm moving and the direction I'm going. So I can help this organization. I can help a lot of others. I pick it up. I'm a pretty quick learner, and the whole idea is trying to boil it down. A lot of the questions I asked here were questions that I know if I have them, other people have them in the audience, so I tried to simplify that. And hopefully, with everyone pulling together, hey, one head isn't enough. It's getting all the heads together. It's where we really come up with something great. And that's what I'm saying is something we need to have more time here at the conference.
I very much appreciated your talk as well, and I would look forward to that packet myself. But I have just one point that I want to underline in terms of your earlier presentation that talked about Mother Teresa and compassion, and then your last point about one act of compassion can transform the world, which I think is true. But I want to stress that what was implicit in your talk, I think, that the institutions under which people live have tremendous influence over their degree of compassion and their humanity. If we live under bad institutions, like we do today, they disintegrate people's most fundamental humanity and make them fearful and competitive and so on. So changing the institutions can increase compassion tremendously it can bring out our fundamental humanity. If we have decent institutions, this is a crucial factor in transforming the earth.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And with the compassion, again, I was disagreed with Glenn. Actually, I used different terminology with his presentation about how build organizations and movements and things like that. And he's talking about working in that paradigm of duality when we need to move to a non-dualistic environment. And that's more complicated. That's a whole discussion. But and I think that's what you're talking about. And but people are so scared today. But that compassion should not dilute your effort. You're coming from a position of love, which is powerful. Gandhi started out being angry, okay, when he's thrown off the train. But then he went ahead with Satyagraha, the peace movement and nonviolence. If you read the book, if you want to, what he was talking about, power versus power and force, it's actually any movement based on force, even the world's best, largest lasting empire, the Roman Empire, based on force, it uses energy, it goes out of existence. Did you read Hawkins? But anyhow, you read it in Gandhi, and they have a vibration calibration scale. His position was so much powerful in a scale of like 1 to 1,700 compared to Chamberlain, like at 180. Chamberlain didn't have a chance, and he brought down the British Empire imperialistic without firing a single shot, and started really the end of global imperialism from an incredible position. That did not stop him from having movements. It didn't stop him from going out there and communicating it, and organizing people, all the things we have to do. But you're coming from an authentic position in your heart that's absolutely invincible, uncompromising, no matter what obstacle you take with you. Meet somebody and they don't want to listen to what you have to say, fine. What the Bible says, like, well, wipe your sand off the sandals and bless them and move on to spread the word, the good news to a bunch of other people that they're more receptive. Don't waste your time, life's too short. But do not, you come from here, you don't stop, no matter what happens. Hey, you can put me on a cross. I don't care. I'm not going to stop.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Michael.